soul, I can say it is well. Jesus has overcome, and the grave is overwhelmed. The victory is won. He is risen from the dead, and I will rise when he calls my name. No more sorrow, no more pain. I will rise on eagle's wings before my God, fall on my knees and rise. I will rise. There's a day that's drawing near, when this darkness breaks to light, and the shadows disappear, and my face shall be my eyes. Jesus has overcome, and the grave is overwhelmed. The victory is won. He is risen from the dead, and I will rise when he calls my name. No more sorrow, no more pain. I will rise on eagle's wings before my God, fall on my knees and rise. I will rise, and I hear the voice of many angels sing, worthy is the Lamb, and I hear the cry of every longing heart, worthy is the Lamb, and I hear the voice of many angels sing, worthy is the Lamb, and I hear the cry of every longing heart, worthy is the Lamb, worthy is the Lamb. I will rise when he calls my name. No more sorrow, no more pain. I will rise on eagle's wings before my God, fall on my knees and rise. I will rise. I will rise.
All right, good morning, church. It's time for Children's Church. Well, we're going to start a new series of messages this morning, and that's going to last throughout the summertime. And we'll basically be looking at some themes about discipleship. I was thinking about Mark chapter 1, verse 16 and 17. The Bible says Jesus was passing along the Sea of Galilee, and he saw Simon and Andrew, the brother of Simon, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And Jesus said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you become fishers of men." And that's the call that Jesus gives to each one of us, that we should follow him. And he said, "I will make." He's going to make us into something new, give us a job and duties to do, a person to be, to follow Him. And this summer, we're going to emphasize this idea of the daily trek of discipleship, the journey, the way that we spend our lives following after Christ. It's not something we just do one time and then everything is set. It's a daily challenge, and it's a daily struggle for us. And so as we think about discipleship, I want to define a couple of terms. The word disciple occurs in the New Testament 269 times. And most of us go by the term Christian. We call ourselves Christians, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the word Christian only appears in the Bible 3 times. But disciple is the description that we see much more often. A disciple is a learner, somebody who's a pupil, a student, who accepts the teachings of Christ, not only in belief, but also in lifestyle. Not just what we believe, that we believe the right things, but that it affects how we live, that we live a different kind of life, a Jesus kind of life. And the journey with Jesus is not completed in a day or a week. It's a lifelong walk. There's no such thing as short-term discipleship. We're disciples for the rest of our lives. We're learning, we're growing, we're becoming more and more. And the truth is, if you feel that you haven't done very well on your journey with Jesus, that's okay, because you can begin again today. And that's the good news of Jesus, is every day is fresh, every day's a renewed time, a time of consistent commitment to the Lord. And so we're going to begin this journey with Jesus as He began His best-known sermon, the Sermon on the Mount. We're going to be in Matthew chapter 5 and talk about the Beatitudes. And I'm sort of, what I want to do really is want to get Jim McConnell to come up here and do his class on Beatitudes. It was a wonderful class if you were a part of that. Was that last year at some time? A fantastic job, and I learned a lot about the Beatitudes, and I appreciate his teaching on that. But I think about the Beatitudes, sometimes we forget about them. You know, it's a sort of an interesting list of statements that Jesus makes, and it's easy to read them and say, yeah, that's really important, and then just move on and not ever think about it again. And what I want us to do is kind of let the Beatitudes saturate our thinking, and not only our thinking, but our behavior. Oswald Sanders said, Jesus set forth the characteristics of the ideal subjects of His kingdom, qualities that were present in perfection in the life and character of the one who announced them. In other words, these Beatitudes, Jesus lived these out perfectly, and He's calling us to live them out, and so we can look to Him to learn about how to live them out. These 8 qualities that begin with the word blessed. And to be honest, I think if we looked at this list of teachings, our initial thought wouldn't be, oh, this will make me happy. You know, this is going to make me really feel great about life, you know, because some of them are really hard. And some of them require us to kind of think opposite of the way that we normally think. So the Greek word, translated blessed, it really doesn't have a precise English equivalent. I like Swindoll's definition. He suggests that it's an inward contentment or an abiding joy, unaffected by outward circumstances. So when we think about blessed and this idea of blessing, it means that there's a joy that we have, a contentment with the Lord that goes beyond all of the outward circumstances of life. We're all fighting battles. We all have things that are going on in our life that are hard, that are sometimes distressful. And in that, we don't lose our joy. We don't lose our contentment, our knowledge that Jesus is with us. He's going to walk with me through every step of this, and we hang on to that truth. That's the blessed life. And I like how Bruner in his commentary, which is one of my favorite commentaries on Matthew, he translates blessings. He doesn't say blessed are, he says blessings on. And his point is that he says that Jesus is saying in these Beatitudes, I'm with you. I'm on your side. And so when you go through these experiences, I want you to know how I'm going to be at work bringing about a contentment and a joy that you couldn't have on your own. So we're going to jump in here. We're going to do one sermon. And so I think I can cover all 8 Beatitudes in about 2 hours. So if you'll hang tight with me, we'll work on that. So this beginning place is how Jesus has taught us to live. And we're going to divide these up into two sections. It's not on your bulletin outline. There are 4 qualities of our spiritual life and 4 pursuits of the disciple of Jesus. So we're going to start off with the 4 qualities of our spiritual life. And the first one is kind of surprising, I think, but it's spiritual inadequacy. A spiritual inadequacy. See, I want to be strong. I want to be powerful. I want to be full of faith and really make something happen. And Jesus, he begins with, blessed are the poor in spirit. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. The poor in spirit. Poor is a word here that means nothing at all. Bankrupt. No resources. On our own, we do not come to God with all of our great things and say, God, look how great I am. Look at all these things I have that I want to use for you. Instead, we come with nothing. We come with dependence. And I don't know if we even realize how fully we depend on God for our spiritual life, for all of our life. And so we come to God with nothing except to say, I need you. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. What a great reward. And that's in the first and last beatitude. It's sort of a bookend of these statements of Jesus that say that I'm going to bless you in ways that you can't even imagine, but we've got to approach life in a certain way for that to happen. I like how Bruner says that the Son of God simply blesses broken people. When you look out at the crowd, Jesus gathers this crowd together, and they're not the powerhouses, they're not the religious people, they're not the influential people, they're people who're struggling. They're people who don't know how, ultimately. And so these are words of grace to broken people. If you ever think that, well, because my life, I don't have everything all together, I don't seem to be able to stir up this great spiritual strength, I bet God just doesn't really want me around. I don't think he can use me. Think again. Come to him with nothing. That's where he does his best work. And this is the key to unlocking all the other beatitudes. It's the starting place. This is how we come to God. I come with my hands empty. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. A spiritual inadequacy. If we could save ourselves, we wouldn't need the Lord. And then there's a spiritual contrition. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Now, we mourn in a lot of ways. We mourn a lot of different kinds of losses in our life. But I really think this beatitude is mostly about our spiritual life. When we look at this fact that I'm poor in spirit, I don't have anything to bring to God. I'm sad because my sin has interfered so much in my life and been such a powerful presence. And I've had a struggle with that. And I want to turn it over to God. I'm mourning over my sin. And Jesus says, I want you to be comforted in that. And this idea of mourning, I think we've got to be careful not to fall into two extremes. One mistake that some Christians can make is to believe a Christian can never be happy and laughing. What are you smiling at? Don't you know that you're a sinner and took the cross to save you, and you should be mourning over your sin? And the other extreme is the people who think they have to be happy and laughing to really feel like they're spiritual. And Jesus kind of plows down the middle of that and says, blessed are those who mourn. If you're mourning your sin, you're mourning the losses of life, you're mourning the brokenness of your life, I want to comfort you. That's how you're going to find joy in this struggle, is through the comfort that comes from God. And then a spiritual humility. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. And meek, it means not overly impressed by a sense of one's self-importance. It means being gentle and humble and considerate. It's exactly the opposite of everything the world teaches you. If you look out in the world, what the world teaches you is to be aggressive, stand up for your rights, plow everybody down who doesn't believe like you believe. Let's tear them apart. And Jesus says, don't think of yourself as that important. The meek have an inheritance, and the world doesn't. So let's don't be like the world. Meekness aligns our will with God's rather than seeking our own path. Under pressure, we can all speak and act in ways that are not our best selves. And Jesus says, I want you to be humble. I want you to be meek. Not weak, just meek. It takes a lot of strength to be meek. It takes a lot of strength to hold it all in. And sometimes that's what we need to do. Spiritual inadequacy, a spiritual contrition, a spiritual humility, and a spiritual aspiration. Aspire to something more, something greater. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. A passion for righteousness. To have a right relationship with God, to seek out God in our life. To want to, more than anything else, be close to God. To be hungry for righteousness, to thirsty for it. Like Psalm 42:1 says, as a deer pants for flowing streams, so pants my soul for you, O God. And so those are the four qualities of our spiritual life. And it's so opposite from the way we normally think. Is it for you? It is for me. You know, I normally think, go in there, get strong, take charge. And what Jesus says is, what I need you to do is I need you to come humbly, recognizing I'm the only one who can give you what you need spiritually. And I want you to aspire to grow in your spirit, to grow closer to God. And so now I'm going to give you four things to do. And the Beatitudes kind of switch gears here. This first part has a lot to do with our relationship with God. And the second part has a lot to do with our relationship with other people. So here are four pursuits of the disciples of Jesus. And the first one is to be merciful. In verse 7, blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. And mercy is the ability to enter into another person's situation and be sympathetic toward their plight or their problem. Trying to see things from the other person's point of view. And Swindoll said that those whose hearts are moved for those in need, having desire to step in and assist in relieving their pain. Mercy is not just looking at people and saying, oh, that's really sad, but saying, what can I do? I want to be merciful so I can receive mercy too. Mercy encourages the one who's fallen to begin again. To say we've all needed God's mercy. So be compassionate, be merciful, and be pure, verse 8. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. And the emphasis here is on inward purity. The word pure means unadulterated, sincere, without hypocrisy. So the pure in heart will see God. The more that you live the Jesus life, the more that we let the Beatitudes saturate our hearts and our thoughts and our minds, and we begin to act in these ways, we're going to see God at work in ways that we overlooked in the past. We didn't see it. But these direct our attention to the most important things. So the pure in heart will see God, but not only in this life, ultimately, of course, in the future we'll see God on the other side. And then be peaceful. Verse 9 says, blessed are the peacemakers, for they should be called the sons of God. And I like how somebody said, this verse doesn't amplify the peace lovers or the peacekeepers, but the peacemakers, the people who seek to reconcile when there's difficulty. And again, Swindoll, one of my favorite authors, he said those who make peace relieve tensions and don't feed fuel to fires of controversy. A peacemaker seeks resolutions to arguments and debates. A peacemaker works hard to keep offenses from festering into fractured relationships. Be a person who looks to make peace at every opportunity that you can. We're one of my old favorite illustrations is that, we're like porcupines at the prom. We want to dance, but every time I get too close, we stick each other a little bit. So you got to learn how to dance without hurting each other, and that's what being a peacemaker is. I think being peaceful is realizing that sometimes we all have a little sharp edge. Let's work to keep things peaceful among ourselves and to be loyal. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. I don't know anything about religious persecution. I've never been persecuted. I might have been disliked for taking a godly position in life, or trying to be a good person without, some other person who wanted to drag me into sin, was unhappy that I didn't come along with them. Or, there might be people who say, oh, there goes a Christian, you know what they're like. And, those kind of things happen. That's not really persecution. We have brothers and sisters who are meeting in secret to worship God, committed to doing that, but recognizing that if they get caught, it's a death sentence. And they're still willing to do it. And look at all the apostles, how they continued to live their life and to testify to the truth about Jesus. And all of them, except maybe John the apostle, but I think all the other apostles were martyred. Peter crucified upside down. I mean, what Jesus is saying is, no matter what happens in this life, I want you to be loyal. And if you're persecuted, it's easy to read this and say, well, those are challenging, those are important, and then not to think about them again. But what I want us to do is how to think about for a minute how to make these function in our daily Christian walk. How do I put this into action? How do I make this part of my daily trek of discipleship, my journey of discipleship? And I think I'm going to give you just some ideas, and you can maybe one or two of these will resonate with you. But I do think we should intentionally apply the Beatitudes. I think we should take a look at each one of them and say, okay, how do I put this into practice? And maybe 8 is too many. Wake up every day and read this list of 8 and say, okay, how can I put these 8 things into practice? It might be that we take 1 a day. And just that day, think about how can I do what this beatitude suggests? Because these are not our natural way of looking at things. These are sort of backwards to us. They're surprising to us when Jesus says, this is the blessed life. And so as we think about each one of them, maybe each day take a beatitude and put it into practice. Another idea is to compare the culture to the Beatitudes, to pay closer attention to the contrast of the world and what Jesus is calling us to. Because in the world system, we're drawn into that. We live in it. It's impossible not to be affected by it. But what I need to do is recognize that when I see what's happening in the world, it's opposite of what Jesus is calling me to compare the culture of the world, the culture that we live in. Not just the world, but our city and our neighborhood. What does that look like? What's happening there? And how is that compared to what Jesus is teaching here? I think we need to familiarize our need for them. We need to remember that these are not just 8 suggestions. These are things we need for our spiritual life. Henri Nouwen said that every word of the 8 Beatitudes that Jesus proclaimed in the Sermon on the Mount are for all people for all times. But some will strike us more than others depending on our circumstances. And so I need to keep these fresh in my mind, because one day maybe one of them is really important. And maybe another day another one will be prominent in my life and in my thinking and what I need. And then recognize that these will direct you to a different path than you might normally take. A spirit of gentleness and self-control is especially needed when there are things happening that can make us irritable or fearful or self-seeking. I need to rely on these principles to help me through those difficult times. It's going to cause me to act differently, to think differently. It's going to put me on a different path in life. And then I need to seek to be a person who brings healing instead of wounding. In all of these, what I see are, especially in those first 4 or 5, that broken, hurting people come to Jesus. And in each one of those settings, he says, I'm going to comfort you. You're going to inherit the earth. I'm going to satisfy you. You're going to receive mercy. These things are happening because we come to Christ with our brokenness. And I need to be a person who brings that into the life of other people, to bring healing and strength instead of wounding them. I think that one of the principles I see here is that this blessedness, this blessed life that Jesus promises, is for everybody. It's not for the super spiritual. It's not for the people who figured out how to live for Christ but in every situation, or the people who got it all together. I don't really know any of those people, by the way. I don't know anybody who's got it all together. We all got our struggles. But it's for everybody. It's for me. Randy Harris said the people on the mountain that day were occupied by a foreign country. Many of them were poor. They were the marginalized people of society. And Jesus wanted them to know from the very beginning that God loved them and they were blessed by God because the rest of the world told them that they were throwaway people. And Jesus is saying, you're not throwaway people, you're my people. That's why I like Bruner. He says, Jesus' message in the Beatitudes is, I'm for you. I'm with you. I'm going to help you through this. It's for everybody. And then I like how somebody suggested that we should consider what Jesus is offering in the Beatitudes as a way of rewriting the chapters of your life. For instance, the chapter where I lost everything and Jesus gave me everything that mattered when I was poor in spirit and he gave me the kingdom of heaven. Or the chapter when I lost a loved one and Jesus came near to my broken heart when I was mourning and he gave me comfort. Or the chapter when I felt run over and beat up and Jesus gave me hope. Blessed are the meek. They'll inherit the earth. And so in each one of these we have this picture of Jesus turning the tables on our struggles in life. And finally, I think we should see the Beatitudes as a promise. That when we look at the Beatitudes, we're not just looking at this set of guidance. Okay, here's how you deal with each situation. Here's how you come to God. Here's how you treat other people. But instead, each one of them contains a promise. And N.T. Wright said, Jesus is not suggesting that these are simply timeless truths about the way the world is. He says, you know, if Jesus is saying that everybody who mourns will be comforted, that's not true right now. But the promise is that you will be comforted. And Jesus is saying that with his work, these things start to come true. They're an announcement of some wonderful news ahead. The Beatitudes are promises. And so when I think about the Beatitudes and how sometimes I've just read them and said, wow, those are powerful teachings, and maybe gone through a class and really examined each one of them and thought, yeah, this is really great. But sometimes I fail to remember that this impacts my whole life and every area of my life, that these are teachings that Jesus gives us that are really the foundation for discipleship. And so the daily trek of discipleship is an ongoing effort to keep these 8 principles in place in our life. And I like how somebody said, these are the most significant words ever spoken. Their simplicity is deceptive, but there's gold under this ground. And that's so true. So this is a daily journey with Jesus. And it's his teaching that we follow day in and day out. And this summer, we're going to spend every Sunday, Lord willing, talking about facets of discipleship, of what does it mean to walk with Jesus every day. And I thought a great place to start with that was this set of teachings that impacts every area of our life. And maybe somebody here today is ready to get started with your life with Jesus. And we take those initial steps of faith and repentance and baptism, and that sets us on the right course. And then it's every day from the rest of our lives, living for Christ and receiving the blessings that he has to offer. I want us to stand and have a prayer together, and then we're going to sing our song of encouragement today. And if we can help you, we certainly would like to. Lord, we stand before you today as people who trust you. We need you. We confess that we don't always live up to our calling, and we realize that there's a certain life that you're calling us to.